Welcome everyone to this webinar on synergies between Horizon and European Structural Investment Funds in the EOSC Partnership. My name is Federica Tandongo and I'm representing the EOSC-Pillar project, and I will be your webinar host today. So this event is organized by EOSC-Pillar, which is, for those who are not familiar with it, it's one of the EOSC regional implementation projects funded in the Infra-EOSC-5 call. And ERA Learn, which is a coordination and support action, whose focus is to provide support to public and private partnerships. We also receive support, very gladly, I would say, from the NIFOS project, which is one of our sister projects in the design of this consultation we are going to present. Our objective today is to introduce this consultation we designed on the subject and which has just opened today, and to which you are very much welcome to participate. Before we start with the program, please next slide. Go ahead, please. Thank you. I have a few housekeeping information for you. So by default, participants are mute. This is to make your webinar experience as smooth as possible and avoid unwanted noise and audio disturbance. But we very much care for your questions and opinions. Indeed, that's why we are holding a live event. So you are encouraged to ask and to comment. If you have questions or comments, please use the Zoom chat, and you will need, of course, to wait to be unmuted to speak. In case the questions are too many, we will reply offline. So we recommend you to let us know who you are when you are asking a question or making a comment. After the presentations, we'll hold an interactive part with Slido. So here you can see the code, but no, you don't need to memorize it because we will show it later again. So our questions are designed to be very brief for this part. So with yes or no, closed options and things like that. But so you won't need to elaborate, but you are welcome to do it again. And to post additional comments on the questions in Slido. Please be aware that we are recording this webinar and that later on we'll make available the recording and materials on the event website. So this should be done by the end of this day or tomorrow. Of course, in case you have technical difficulties with the audio and the tool, please let us know on the chat again, and we'll try to assist as best as we can. Now I did my housekeeping duties, so let's move on with the next slide to the program. So in a few minutes, I'll give the floor to Maria Bianco from ERA Learn, who will talk about the synergies between the structural funds in the framework of European partnerships, and to Donatella Lucchesi from INFN, who will provide a few real-life examples from INFN experience, just setting the floor for the discussion that will happen later on. Because the presentations are quite dense with information, we will take a few questions after each one. Then, if the questions are many, we'll wait for the interactive part to see if we have enough time to propose all the questions live. Otherwise, anyway, we are going to reply to you. This is one of the reasons why we organized all this. So don't worry if we don't call you and give you the floor. So before I leave the floor to my colleagues, I'd like to tell you a few words about EOSC-Pillar for those who are not familiar with our project and why this consultation is important for us, and we believe for you too. So EOSC-Pillar, our aim is to coordinate open science effort in 5 countries: Austria, Belgium, France, Germany, and Italy, and ensure their contribution and readiness to the EOSC. And next slide, please. We are not an island, but we are part of a wider ecosystem, and this includes also other 3 regional projects that we altogether cover almost all Europe, and we have similar objectives and a similar vision, which is that we need regional and national initiatives to multiply the reach and the impact of the EOSC, and especially to ensure long-term sustainability to this initiative, which in our opinion is very important for the future way we'll do science. Next, please. So, in the previous slide, you saw a few ingredients of we believe are important for this sustainability. So the catalogs and training and skills, and of course interoperability, but funding of course is one of the key ingredients for sustainability, and we believe structural and regional funds could be an important ingredient for this, but at this time they are not always so easily accessible as we would like, and we need to understand when we can use them as in kind, and when the priorities are right or need to be harmonized. That's why we are here, because we want to consult with you on how to improve the situation for the next programming. So I think I've finished now. Next slide, please. And I can give the floor to Maria. Maria, please.
Hello. Hi, everyone. I'm Maria, and I'm project officer at the Italian Ministry for University and Research. Thanks for attending this meeting. I will go through my presentation, next slide, please, by giving you what we do within our Learn project, the state of play about synergies, and a possible pathway for improving synergies among Structural Fund and Horizon Europe Fund. Next slide, please. Learn is, as Federica said, a coordination support action that since 2018, on behalf of the European Commission, tried to support some interesting activity dedicated to public-public partnership. Now this scope has been extended to all the European partnership proposed under Horizon Europe. In the frame of ERA-Learn, we operate a unique database for partnership networks, calls, and funded projects, and we provide studies and analysis on thematic clustering, internationalization, widening, but also we we provide effort for the identification and spread of good practices in some specific challenges, such as widening of participation, inclusiveness, but also best practice in synergies creation. And Learn also support the impact assessment by providing tool and assessment exercise also for the development of KPIs within the partnership instruments. Next slide, please. The debate on synergies. I want to show you the current state of play at the moment, because the debate on synergies started since the preparation of Horizon 2020, and now it's undergoing under another round of consideration, because all the regulation, both Horizon Europe and also cohesion policy, are revising rules for improving the implementation of synergies. Within Learn, we identified the most suitable synergy that can be applied to a European partnership, but we still need the final negotiation of the program. On the other hand, the many Commission services are involved in the revision of the cohesion policy, the rules, the regulation, and also they are committed in creating new tools for improving synergies among funds. Another element which is really important is a pending amendment on to the general blocks exemption regulation that would allow the exemption from state aid rule to some action under certain conditions, such as the funding of transnational project rating from a centrally organized call for proposal, and also evaluated in a central way. Next slide, please. The issue related to the structural fund, the mobilization of structural fund in a synergistic way with the other direct action, it's a very important debate that is mainly focused on the revision of the cohesion policy. This means that the enabling condition for using the structural fund are detailed in the cohesion policy and stems from the smart specialization strategies. So therefore, the first step for creating opportunities and possibility is to understand in which smart specialization strategy falls your region, your country, in order to align the research and development action to possible collaboration across Europe. Here, I will give you some links, useful tool for understanding the smart specialization strategies in your region and country. And first of all, I would like to highlight I@RIS3 database, which is an interesting tool providing information on public investment priorities. Looking at that database, you can see, identify possible collaborators across Europe which have similar S3 strategies and priorities. The most relevant funding programs to look at for creating synergies are, of course, national, regional operative programs. But also, we do not have to underestimate the possibility opened by the European Territorial Cooperation, which is another important program based on structural fund. On the right box, on the box in the right, sorry, I listed here the 7 funds included in the cohesion policy, but here we have to also include the agricultural for rural development fund. Next slide, please. Which is the best pathway for synergies? In our analysis, we understood that the best way to achieve synergies in this period, which is a limbo period between in which we are still in the negotiation phase of Horizon Europe, and also regional and national programs are under discussion. Probably they will be finalized in the first quarter of 2021. So in this limbo situation, it's important to open a dialogue among consortia, managing authorities, and national or regional stakeholders for enabling the identification of research priorities in compliance with S3 priorities, in such a way to disclose some structural fund according to our main research interests and priority. Another step is to bring to the surface the need of the local, regional, and national stakeholder in order to improve regulation by including provision that enable parallel and alternative and complementary funding mainly operating in a local lobbying network, let's say. Next slide, please. In this slide, I would like to give you a general overview, which are the most suitable synergies for European partnership we identified during our analysis. The first one is the sequential synergy, which occur when a structural fund intervenes for the creation of precondition and for the establishment of a kind of ecosystem which facilitates the participation in a European partnership. Or in a second step, provide the resources for the follow-up of the European Partnership funded project through the calls. This means that a project developed in a research and development project within a European partnership can take another step further toward, I don't know, proof of concept or market deployment, for example. The second kind of synergies is the parallel synergies, which support complementary activity related to European funded project. This means that, for example, a managing authority can provide support for those activities not funded within the European partnership call, but also for the partner of the partnership, sorry. The local managing authority can enable funds for supporting additional activities within the work plan of the European partnership. The last one, the integrated synergy, is just hypothetical because we do not have any real example in the past, but hopefully will be enabled in the future European Horizon Europe program, and it will allow the convergence, the accumulation of structural fund within as a partner or national contribution, and will contribute in the calculation of the European contribution. But this is just hypothetical. This is a discussion and which is still ongoing, and we will see what the result will be. Now, next slide, please. I would like to give you some practical example of the three synergies we identified. For the sequential synergies, we bring the example of the Italian National Program for Research Infrastructures. This is an important program which has been drafted in alignment with the ESPRI roadmap and according to national and regional S3 smart specialization strategies. Looking at this initiative, we have to say that the European Partnership initiatives do not differ so much from the European research infrastructure for what concerns transnational participation of public funders. Therefore, we think that here we have to look at to find similarities. This program is really interesting because with a top-down approach, we managed to convey different funds along the green lines here on the right, where we converged block funding on research, on funding of research infrastructure, and then with the alignment of S3, national and regional, we disclosed also structural fund resources. It's worth to say that the call was worth around 300 million euros, and we are going to fund 18 projects. One of these 18 was strictly focused on the EOSC objective, while some other out of the 18 claimed resources for IT infrastructure empowering or data center and so on. So for us, it's a measure for creating precondition to the participation to EOSC initiative in the future. Next slide, please. Concerning the parallel synergies, we are bringing here the example of Clean Sky joint technology undertaking. This is just one of the possible examples because several initiatives moved on the way to create synergies with bilateral agreement. It's important here to underline that through memoranda of understanding of Clean Sky joint technology undertaking and several regions also outside the first managing authority which joined the initiative, they were able to disclose structural fund for parallel, a complementary project to a main project funded under Clean Sky. This is a very interesting best practice because it allowed not only the funding of not funded project under the Clean Sky, but it creates the ecosystem in the region for moving forward the result achieved through a Clean Sky call. This is very important. Next slide, please. The last one is about the integrated synergies. We do not have real example, but in the last, in Horizon 2020, there were the possibility for managing a funding agency to bring structural fund in a co-fund action, while being careful in not including that money in the virtual pot for calculating European contribution. This will be probably overcome in the new program, Horizon Europe, but at the moment it's just a proposal. So until we do not have confirmation, we cannot say that structural fund may contribute to the common pot for the calculation of the European contribution. We strongly hope this will be enabled. Next slide, please. Now, in our study, Oh, sorry, I'm going out of time. In our study, we went through the analysis of the barriers, and the regulatory barrier attain to all the stakeholders, both managing authorities then beneficiary, while organizational barriers are mainly attained to beneficiaries, while attitudinal barriers are probably more linked to the approach in the managing authorities to work with the European fund. So what I would like to say with this slide that with the organizational barrier, researchers do not have the possibility to forecast the opening of structural measure along H2020 measure. So it's difficult to program, to plan a strategic approach to funding measure. The attitudinal barrier instead are mainly a constraint of the managing authorities. Programs are managed following the distribution of work, mainly such as division of competence like ministries, like departments, and so on. So these are something that should be managed in a different way in order to approach synergies and to give this opportunity. Next slide, please. To come to a conclusion, it's okay. My slides are very intense, and if you have questions, we can talk also in offline. But conclusions are related to how to approach synergies. First of all, in the limbo situation we are now, it's important to explore the state of play related to own regional S3, own regional, national smart specialization strategies, and try to understand if our research focus is already included or need to be further specified. Then open a dialogue with the managing authorities in order to make them understand that we need a proper funding landscape, because EOSC want to achieve certain objectives and goals, and they need some small provision probably in the measure, in the funding measure. Then explore also the possibility to establish regional networks in the frame of Interreg program, the European Territorial Cooperation, because there we, thanks to the regional, interregional level, we can create parallel or complementary projects that contribute to our goal. And then explore also the possibility to develop bilateral collaboration through memoranda of understanding with the region that may align in terms of timing, but also in terms of goals and objectives, their own funding measure, and disclose the European Structural Fund. This is my last takeaway, and thank you very much. If you have questions, do not hesitate in putting in the chat. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria. So please, if anyone has questions for Maria, now is the right time to ask. Okay, if not, I think we can move. Okay, yes, all the slides will be available together with the with the registrations of this event. And of course, in case some question comes later, you will be able to get in touch with the presenters. Any other questions for Maria? If not, I will move to give the floor to Donatella, and then if you just weren't quick enough, you will have your chance after her presentation. Please, Donatella, the floor is yours.
Hello, thank you, Federica. So I'm Donatella Lucchesi. I'm a physics professor at the University of Padova, but I'm also associated to INFN for physics research. I work in particular in LHC experiment at CERN. So you will see two use cases today that I'm going to present here, mainly related to these disciplines. And so at the end, I'm open for questions also related more to the general argument than not to the physics case. Let me start thanking my colleagues, Giampaolo Carlino, Giacinto Donvito, and Claudio Grandi for the help that they give me for the preparation of these slides, and also for the useful discussion we had together. Next slide, please. Before starting, let me introduce you briefly which is the e-infrastructure that we have inside the INFN. You can see on the left a picture where you see Italy and then several centers. These are the INFN centers, one big center, the tier 1 in Bologna, and then other, let's say, smaller center, but still quite large centers. Oh, something happened, is okay, around Italy. These centers are being built in order to do the LHC, the Large Hadron Collider data analysis. So we have the grid middleware in the past and also now developed for this kind of physics, and now it is used everywhere in the world. Now we are moving toward these cloud services that has been developed and specialized for this research, but now are used also for other application. As you can see from the numbers that I put here just as a reference, we have really a big, huge computing and data infrastructure. Or the lines that you see are the network. We have a high-speed network everywhere, almost everywhere in Italy, provided by GAR. Next slide, please. Okay, so before going in the discussion of the current project, I want to just quote two projects that really helped a lot in the construction, in the building up of our infrastructure. The first one is the Indigo Data Cloud. This is a H2020 project funded in 2015, so now it's over. But thanks to this funding, the INFN and the other participants to the project that were Europe-wide, has been possible to provide our infrastructure that is not only in Italy but is in the world, with tools, application, and for the grid part, and in addition also to the development and the enhancement of the cloud framework in order to respond to the request of our community, but also to integrate in the usage of these infrastructures also other communities. So in the next slide, instead, you may see another project that this time has been funded by the Italian funds, the regional fund. So this is the RECAS project. You can see on the right the details of the project. Here, in this case, the project, the funds were available in order to for the infrastructure and for the resources. So you can see in the pictures that thanks to these funds, our infrastructure in the south of Italy was really strengthened, because it was possible to build really large data centers. And now what I can say is that these RECAS data centers and the services that we have been able to develop with the Indigo Data Cloud are part of the INFN infrastructure. So we do not distinguish what has been built and developed with our own funds and what we actually had it thanks to these other particular funds. But now let's move to the current situation in the next slide, please. So I decided to present and to discuss two examples here. The first one is the Abisco project. So Abisco is the infrastructure for big data and scientific computing that has been found in Italy in 2019 and will last till 2023. The scope of the call was the strengthening of the research infrastructure identified as priorities in this national program of research infrastructure that you heard also before by Maria. The research infrastructure that can apply to this call were the one that are functional to the implementation of projects responding to the ESFRI area, and that are also in the, they have some impact in the national smart specialization strategy path in Italy. In this project, the eligible expenses are the scientific instrumentation and the research equipment, including also the replacement, for example, of what we already bought for with the previous funds. Then we can buy technical systems that are functional to the project, and also some software license. What is not possible to do is to pay people, so there is no personnel involved in this project. So in the next slide, yes, you see here the objectives of the call. That was the strengthening of the RECAS, the previous one that I described, scientific computing infrastructure in the south of Italy. And the idea was to increase and to update the computing and storage resources that are already available to keep the infrastructure competitive in the international context. The evolution of the current infrastructure toward the federation of data center in order to facilitate a synergic and transparent integration of grid and cloud services for the scientific and non-scientific needs. And of course, one of the important objectives was the multidisciplinary and the multi-functionality that is always a request when you build a infrastructure. So next slide. Just to give you an idea of the impact of this project on an infrastructure, I quote here where the expenses are going and the amount of the funds. You see that the amount of the funds is quite important because we have 18 million of euro. And these are mainly will be, not are, because it still has to be spent, but will be spent in order to buy computing and storage. So we will have really a huge number of CPU cores for the high throughput computing and high performance computing. But we are planning also to have a new kind of resources, like, for example, the GPU system. Then we will improve and we will enlarge the disk, the capacity of the storage by buying disk space, several tens of petabytes, and we will also upgrade a tape library. Okay, so next slide. Here I'm starting to discuss now another project, a smaller project respect to the previous one that was directly funded by the minister. Here this is a regional project, is called SUPER, and has been funded by the Emilia-Romagna region under these details that you can find here in the title. The scope of the call here was the strengthening of the research infrastructures present in Emilia-Romagna, as foreseen by these legal details, in particular related to the supercomputing and big data, and that's why the project is called SUPER. The eligible expenses in this case were the scientific and technological and advanced equipment that can be buy, also technical and scientific and design consultancy. So for example, if we have to change, and you will see some data centers, and then also personnel dedicated to the specific activities. But in this case, having personnel when you have to deploy and to develop and deploy or integrated services is very, very important. So next slide. Just for reference, as I said before, I give you here an idea of the impact of the project, quoting the million of euros. So in this case, we have 4 million euros dedicated to the project. Many of them will go again in the resources, so computing and storage. Again, several servers, CPU cores for high throughput computing, high performance computing, and GPU. But then we have also storage, again, disk space and tape library, and services. So services are important because we can develop things, software in order to integrate the application to the new infrastructure, and more important, to have the possibility to federate the services that have been already developed under other projects in order to arrive to have just one large infrastructure in Emilia-Romagna. Next slide, please. I cannot, let's say, refrain to comment where we are going in Emilia-Romagna from SUPER to the future. Probably many of you already heard the new European Center for Medium Range Weather Forecast data center will be located in Bologna. So a very large and big data center is going to be delivered, I think, at the end, probably at the end of this year. This center will host also one of the biggest INFN data center, the Tier 1, and also the Sineca Computing Center will be there. So the idea of building up a single, very large data center in Emilia-Romagna that can serve many disciplines, and not only disciplines, but also be helpful in other activities, is a reality. And SUPER, this project, is the first step toward this integrated computing and data infrastructure. Okay, next slide. I comment from now on the, let's say, the issue more than other that we are experiencing in managing this project. So the first, for the Abisco, the PON on the south, I mean, the minister founded project in the south of Italy. What we can say that we are experiencing is the lack of flexibility in the call that then is propagated in the project implementation. For example, if at a certain point we realize that we will need more disk space than CPU, that cannot be changed. Then, of course, in Italy, one of the problems is the bureaucracy. There is a quite a complex system in the purchasing that is really delaying the project execution, or at least is making very hard the life of people that have to buy these things. And related to the EOSC, there is no synergy between the EOSC and this project. For example, it's not possible to publish the services that are developed in this kind, in this project specifically, in the EOSC marketplace or the EOSC catalog. Now, comments on the super project in the next slide. Here, the major issue were that the regional administrations in several areas were not always ready to manage large projects with national or international relevance. And this, of course, can delay the project execution. Again, the same comment that I had before, the complexity in the purchasing of the equipment due to the bureaucracy is not helping and not speeding up our the project execution. Then a comment that is more related to the usage of these funds, that is true also for the Abisco project, the other one that I quote. With the current regulation, it's not possible to destine the resources acquired with these projects or the service to other scopes. And this is something that is limiting, of course, the usage of the resources. Finally, there is no mention in the EOSC call, no mention of the EOSC in the call, but there is, the EOSC is considered in the project execution. And to conclude, in my final slide, I have, three considerations that are my consideration. The regional and national funds play a crucial role in the development and the upgrade, the maintenance of the infrastructure. This is true, I think, everywhere, in particular in Italy. The regional and national administration should see the EOSC as an added value. For example, it should be required to provide services or resources to the EOSC and formally, for example, verified in the audit report or in the audit process. And I think that the EOSC should see the national and regional projects as an opportunity and facilitate the integration of resources and services in its infrastructure and in its catalog. And that's all for me today. Thank you.
Thank you, Donatella. Well, that was quite a lot of information and very interesting. So are there any questions for Donatella? Okay, I think you are still digesting all this information. Okay, there is a question from Valentino.
A question, yeah, is there a reason of general importance about why it's not possible to make Abisco project service available through the EOSC marketplace? At the moment, I don't know the answer. I know that it's not possible because I think that mainly is the fact that is related to the fact that Maria also commented before. All these projects are running in parallel without really a cross-talking to each other. So this is something, and for this reason, I think actions or initiatives like this one of today that are very, very important in order to give suggestions on both the EOSC on one side and the project, the regional or I mean national projects to facilitate this project, this process of integration. So at the moment, the reason is that they don't talk each other. What is going in the EOSC is something that is EOSC, quote unquote, related, and what is prepared for the regional projects or national project is related to that.
Okay, but I think the question was also related to, let's say, organizational barriers. So it's just a matter of organization that you can overcome if you talk to each other, or there is anything else which make it plain impossible, for instance, internal regulations or something.
Oh, that I don't know exactly. We should ask probably people. I don't know exactly the details. Maybe someone, I don't know, the people that are connected. I know that it's difficult from the organizational point of view. I don't know if there are also maybe one person that I don't know if he's connected, maybe Giacinto Don Vito, who knows the details of, I know that he tried to do it and he was not able to do it.
Okay, is Giacinto?
Yes, Giacinto is connected.
Online? So I think we could unmute him.
He is now unmuted. Giacinto, you may unmute yourself.
Yeah, good morning to everybody. One of the main point was the lack of coordination among the two initiatives. I mean, they are working on each side of the activity without any concrete interaction. And the main point is that at a given point, we don't have any human effort added together with the funds for buying resources that could help developing services and put those services into the EOSC marketplace. For example, you need some people that has to implement this and has to work in order to get this coherent with the rest of the ecosystem. Obviously, this needs human effort typically. So unless this is organized somewhere else, this could become very hard. Obviously, this is not forbidden, but it is hard to achieve if you don't have in-kind effort or in-kind coordination with the initiatives. If you are on both initiatives, you can do by yourself, but that should not be the right way.
Okay, thank you. Valentino, if you want to ask further questions, you should be now allowed to talk.
Yeah, I think I'm unmuted. No, I mean, I got the answer. So it is a coordination issue. It is a matter of, better discussion. And I mean, that's a very useful thing. What's happening today. I was somehow perhaps also thinking, where is the responsibility? Is it in the the way things are funded nationally, are more the way EOSC is managed internationally, etc. But I don't want to to have too long a discussion about this. I thought it was an interesting comment for what we are doing, particularly in the EOSC Synergy project, where we are trying to improve on the national take-up of the EOSC, and I think this is a relevant example of what we could do, which is probably not done in the best way.
Yeah, I think the responsibility is in both sides. There are both things that you are mentioning that are happening in this moment.
Yeah, maybe this is an interesting thing to point out to the national initiatives that are starting to work in the countries, because maybe they could be the liaison between the two and help, harmonizing and making things easier on the organizational point of view. So, any other questions for Donatella? If not, while you write your question, I'd like to move to introduce the interactive part and invite you to move to the Slido event. You can use the code you see on the screen or use the QR code. And Rob, please wait a few seconds for everybody to connect on Slido, and then please show it on the screen. Thank you. So this is the first question we designed for this interactive part, and the first questions are intended to collect your experience here. And while the last is more about the future and what we can do to improve the situation. So this first question is, has your organization used European structural investment funds to support investments in EOSC and open science in parallel with the Horizon 2020 running project? So I see people is starting to vote. And I see that several of you are answering yes. So if those people are willing to comment, please just put yourself on the Zoom chat so that we can enable you to speak. But we are also interested in the large share of you who said no, in case you have any views on why it's no. So if you encountered difficulties in applying or just didn't occur to you or what. So please, if you want to talk, now it is a good moment for both your intervention in the chat. Okay, still a few minutes for you to reply. And then we will be moving to the next question. So if you didn't vote already, please do so. It appears, Maria, that the Interreg projects are the less familiar to everybody. They are pretty.
It seems so.
They are pretty nice.
Yeah, but in any case, I would like to learn more about these 7%. I would really like to know more.
So please don't be shy and help Maria to learn more. You can also do this offline afterwards if you want to get in touch and make yourself available for a short interview or something. We will be happy to comply.
Yeah, and maybe, Federica, it's worth to say in any case that the consultation will run also offline, so people will have more time for answering, for commenting, and so on. So maybe.
Yeah. One of the reasons why we organized both the event and the online consultation was to present the topics, but then in many cases you will have to ask around your organization. So probably you are not able to answer right now because you have to ask colleagues, and so that's why the consultation will be available from now till mid-August. Okay, I think that nobody is voting anymore, so we can move forward to the next question. What did you implement in this project? Digital infrastructures, equipment, e-services, training, or worked on human capital? So skills, training, whatever. Again, you are very welcome if you want to talk about any specific use case you were involved in. Please don't be shy. Okay, so it seems we have, we don't have a very huge sample, but it seems we have an agreement, Maria, on what's our top priority here. So digital infrastructures seem to be everywhere. So we also have someone who used all 5 topics. Janusz, would you like to comment on your project? We'll be unmuting you if you want. Okay, you should be able to talk now if you want.
Hello, good afternoon. As a project management organization, the KIFI is the both a service providing and project management organization. We executed several regional projects, especially structural fund projects, to either for building digital infrastructures, building services, training, and also increase the human capital in several aspects of our organizations. So we had more than 10 different projects for different purposes, and therefore I think that's only a kind of limitation how many projects I could select in the slide.
Okay, thank you. The limitation was to highlight the more important, but it is good to know that the project involved all the lines of action. Thank you. So again, I think that we will allow 1 more minute to vote. And then we will be moving to the next slide. So if you didn't vote already, please do now. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, let's move to the next question, please. So, did your organization take part in competitive calls launched by an open road funding for e-services provisions to public authorities in EOSC or open science related fields? Okay, again, I see we have several people whose organizations took part in this kind of calls. So if you want to comment, you are very welcome to do so. If you don't want, you can still get in touch after or just complete the consultation afterwards. So we have at least 11 organizations which did participate in this question. And a good share of them did not participate in the call, but we have a few who did. Now I'm getting curious about who in the one are were the lucky ones. So couple of more minutes for this consultation, and then we'll move to the next question. Okay, next slide, please. If you weren't quick enough, you can still complete the consultation anyway. So, which barriers to the combination between European structural investment funds and Horizon 2020 partnership instruments have you experienced? So this question refers to Maria's presentation and the three kinds of barriers. So let me recapitulate for you. So regulatory include state aid, double funding, lack of synchronization between ESIF and EU direct funding. Organizationals include administrative and management fragmentations and lack of communication, inability to forecast. And attitudinal refers to the silo approach, languages barriers, and lack of practical support to apply. So I think it will be especially interesting for us to learn more about this particular question. So again, if anyone would like to provide additional comments on their experience, it would be very nice for us to hear and understand if you want to share. While okay, we have a volunteer to comment. So Gonzalo, now we are unmuting you. You should be allowed to talk now. Please,
Okay.
the floor is yours.
Can you hear me? Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, loud and clear.
Okay, hello. Yeah, so this is Gonzalo Merino from the PIC data center in Barcelona in Spain. And well, I thought I would make a brief comment here. Here, my response was on organizational barriers. Mostly, I wanted to indicate in our case towards this lack of communication, maybe. So I was, I mean, well, thanks for the presentations. I found very interesting all the examples you mentioned for the Italian case. And I think that, I mean, for our center, we would be really interested in articulating some synergies very similar to the ones you have been mentioning. But so far, both in the regional or national environments with the corresponding funding agencies, we have not been able to establish this communication. I mean, as clear as you have displayed in your slides, all these instruments, all these possibilities have not shown up in our dialogue with our funding agencies. Still, the instruments for funding in research infrastructures have been, I mean, they have the link of EOSC and future synergies with structural funds has not appeared. So yeah, I mean, so far it looks like a barrier to me. I'm learning now a lot from your slides, and I think we should go back and talk to our funding agencies to I don't know, to understand. I mean, to make them aware or to understand how to articulate this.
Yeah, Gonzalo, if I may, I would like to clarify one process because we had so short time for the presentation. Managing authorities for identify smart specialization strategies, which are the key for enabling the structural fund. They have to run a process, an interactive process with all the stakeholders on the territories. Therefore, getting in touch with the managing authorities of your region or your at national level, you may enter in the so-called entrepreneurial discovery process, which is a kind of general consultation that continuously the managing authorities have to perform in order to identify, specify, and innovate the smart specialization strategies. So getting in touch with such a networking job, probably you can address some of your needs, the need of your research center and so on. This is, I would say, the process. Also getting in touch with the JRC platforms is important for all of you to understand how to face managing authorities, how to create this dialogue with them. Just a small comment.
I have a question, Maria, while people is voting and digesting all this information, which is to enter this kind of interaction, do you need to have a specific status like public organization, public research organization or something, or is in principle any kind of organization allowed and invited to do so?
I think any kind of organization that can show an excellence in research, in development, and in innovation areas. So I think all of us, we can get in touch with them and try to catch the moment in which to create this dialogue. In my slide, I provided a list of managing authorities in charge of defining the smart specialization strategies. So maybe it's worth now, during the finalization, let's say the planning, the drafting of the operating programs, is worth now to get in touch with them. But now, and try to push with a lobbying action, let's say, what we need, what the research center needs, which kind of provision would be useful for create let's say, a critical mass of excellence, of research results to be deployed and so on. This is the right moment, I would say.
Yeah, it sounds like a very good suggestion and something that will translate in homework for us, at least on the national initiative side. What do you think, Donatella?
Oh, yes. Yes, this is something that we need in the next iteration. I mean, in the next meeting that we will do. This is something that all the things that we discussed today, I think we should really digest of the information and organize in the proper way a discussion for that.
Maria, what do you think the timing would be to have an impact, as you were suggesting?
About the timing, let's say the negotiation process of the operating programs is still ongoing. Probably they foreseen to close all the program in the first quarter of the 2021, but not all the countries are so fast. So probably starting by now, it's a good idea, let's say. Probably the new programs will be launched between the first and second quarter next year. So we have plenty of time to interact with them.
Yeah, it seems a reasonable time frame and something we should follow up also as regional projects to build up critical mass, not only in one country.
Yeah.
So thanks, that's a very good suggestion. And I think we can now move to the next slide, which is the question I had anticipated earlier about the future. So in the next programming period, do you think it would be useful to use structural funds as a part of your in-kind contribution for EOSC? And if yes, please indicate the cost items where it would make a difference. Don't be shy. If, of course, again, if you want to comment, ask, suggest, you are very welcome to it. And if you replied other, please, it could be a good idea to elaborate either in the Zoom chat or if you are shy in the Slido Q&A. You have a free text there you can use to specify what other means. Okay, so training, training would definitely be an interesting point. And Rob, can you go back to the, okay, thanks. So it seems that anyway, by far, equipment and personnel are the most relevant items, and yeah, no surprises here, I think. So we have just 5 minutes left before the end of the webinar. And by the way, thanks everybody for staying with us, even with the lunchtime approaching. So if you want to vote or comment or ask a last minute question, now it's the right time to do it. We will be happy to follow up with you. There is an attendee raising his hand. Okay, Idias, you are now allowed to talk.
Yes, thank you, Federica. I don't have any question. I just want to say that on behalf of EOSC Europe project and GRNet, the National Infrastructures for Research and Technology in Greece, I would like to thank EOSC-Pillar and TIRA for this very timely initiative to organize this initiative. I would like also to thank you, Federica, and Mrs. Bianco and Lucchesi for the very comprehensive presentations. We fully support synergies between structural funds and Horizon, that, as you mentioned, it can be either sequential, parallel, or integrated. Indeed, you gave some very good examples. The important issue here is that these synergies have to be exploited by all member states and the Southeastern Europe region as well. The landscape in the region is indeed fragmented, and there are several barriers. We will fill in also the consultation on time, and we'll see. These synergies should be used to strengthen research infrastructure and infrastructure for networking, HPC, the high performance computing, and HTC, high throughput computing. As Donatella mentioned, infrastructure includes many vital services. It is of crucial importance to improve the current national infrastructures to ensure the integration of grid and cloud services. EOSC Europe project will share the conclusion of this webinar and your fruitful findings on how member states can make a reality the synergies, such as open dialogue, regional networks, or bilateral collaborations, as you mentioned. This is for me, and thank you very much.
Thank you. This was really nice collaboration message, and we do hope this is just the first step to collaborate further on this very important piece of work, which to us will have an impact for the future. So I think we are now, I think we can close now. So unless there are any final comments or remarks, I'd like to remind everybody to participate in the consultation, and of course feel free to share it further and to share the materials of this webinar further. They will be available starting from tomorrow. And you will receive a message when they are ready. So please don't forget to participate in the forum. If you are interested in further collaboration, we regionals are very open to support you and to follow up with you. And okay, let me thank Maria and Donatella for their presentation, and our comm staff for the great job. And my colleague Sarah, who's in the background but is the real director of this activity. So thank you very much, and of course thank you for participating and staying with us. and have
Thanks
a nice
to everybody.
lunch.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye bye, everybody.
Bye.